mentioning, and it starts right at the basics. So getting set up and creating your workspace. When I first became a free agent 2 years ago, I left my office job where I had everything set up for me, and I moved to my home office where I had nothing set up for me at all. Initially, I was working off my dining room table and my couch, and I started to experience, some ergonomic strains, sore back, vision problems, squinting at a small screen, and my wrists were hurting me. And it became very evident to me that ergonomics are very important. So I ended up carving out a space for me at home for me to work my workday. Here are some things to consider when you're carving out your workspace. You will need to consider the optimal location in your home for your office. Try and give yourself some space if you're able to from others if you have people home with you. If you have a door, that's fantastic, or carve out a corner for you. So I know some people have been using furniture to carve out that space. They've used bookshelves just to create the illusion of a workspace. It's nice to signal to your family that, I'm at work. If you have family around you while you're working, my kids finish their school day at 3:30. They do walk in while I'm at the work spot that I've carved out for myself. And when they see me sitting at my desk working away, they know not to interrupt. So it's nice to have that signal. It's recommended that you have a good work surface, like a desk or a table, a chair set at a good working height, and some good lighting for you. I know for me, lighting is really important because I am a person who suffers from migraines. So considering that you have that lighting set for you is at the appropriate level is important. Also, what other people see in your background as you're speaking is important. And I'm sorry, I think my camera is sort of tripping in and out. So if that is the case and you can only sometimes see me, I apologize. I am working on Zoom for, I think, the second time. So it's not a platform that I super use all the time, and I apologize if there's some glitches. So I like working in a natural light setting, but for myself, with my screens on all day, I do have to dim the lights a little bit. So you figure out what works for you, but it also needs to work for the person on the receiving end who you may be meeting with at a meeting. You may want to switch your lighting at that time so that you're not completely dark and that you have a light setting that works for them as well. Think about your posture at your desk. Sometimes switching it up is nice. You can work standing. You can work with exercise balls. You can move to different rooms if you have multiple desks and able to move around. I know Jen McDougall sometimes and I have met, and she's had a beautiful setup outside. So if you're able to and it's quiet enough, think about moving around if you can. It's nice to do that, but making sure that you're always ergonomically set up. And also figuring out how to set up your devices is key, as I'm experiencing right now with my Zoom experience and my phone sort of tripping in and out. What I do know is that from what I've learned with meetings where I'm on a phone, angles do matter. And tripods are available for purchase, as well as Jen has created a really great Lego iPhone holder, which I hope she can share when her camera decides to turn back on. But there are some tutorials online to create some tools at home that you can use that you can get your kids to help you to make too. So those are always fun. And the iPhone Lego holder is a great idea. So your mindset is key.
Natasha,
yes.
It's Jen here. Before we jump into mindset, can I just jump in for a sec?
Right.
So I did want to kind of emphasize, just from my personal experience, and just making sure, is my camera back on? Can people see me? You can't see me?
No.
No? Okay. Well, it's on. It's weird. I can see myself on the screen. So anyways, we'll test this out. Oh, I think, do you know what? It's because I've got my volume is connected to my computer audio, but my camera is on my anyway, so there might be a disconnect between the video. I'm getting messages that some people can't see me, so apologies for that. Again, you have to be agile and adapt, not always be equipped in the way that we would hope to be. Yeah, the first 4 months that I moved into telework, I decided I was going to move away from my house, sell a house, build a new house, and live in a 500 square foot condo with my husband, who was also working from home with me, and 2 kids that were kind of adapting to a new school, and with a dog. So, recognizing that at that point, circumstances were not ideal, and that some of you may be in circumstances that are not ideal. So it is really important to have conversations with the people if you are sharing space. to set some parameters, as Natasha was saying earlier, to see what works for you. In that space, when we were living in the small condo, we had one side that was more professional, and then another side that was, that had the bar and all of the kids' lunch snacks and everything else behind. So we would negotiate every morning who had the more important video calls that day, so that we could kind of set up in the right spot. But we would try to move around the space and kind of go into different rooms according to what our kind of needs of the day were, and if we needed some privacy or time. The other thing, so since then we have now moved into a bigger space, but I do still share a workspace with my spouse, who's also a federal public servant. He's actually just working right behind me here, behind the screen. And so what has saved our relationship has been these things, the headset. So we were able to both get equipped by organizations. It was something that we were able to procure, and it's a kind of noise canceling, which is good just in terms of being able to focus and not overhear everything that he's talking about. But also Natasha and I both also have, and I think Jen McDougall as well, we all have co-workers at home who are four-legged and furry as well. So these also help to minimize those sounds. If you happen to have a dog that likes to bark when the postman or there's someone walking down the street, these also help to kind of muffle that sound and make sure that any conversations that you are having with others are less interrupted. So strongly encourage you to try to kind of, as we seem to be kind of in this space for the short, medium, and potentially hopefully many of us in the longer term, getting equipped kind of adequately is very, I think, important, and making sure that it's meeting your needs to the extent possible. I think, we're learning that some organizations are providing some of these things. In other cases, we've had to kind of make do, and just, I think you can see it earlier, but this is the Lego phone holder that Natasha was alluding to earlier. So you can kind of prop it up. So there's ways that even if it's not your organization that is giving it to you or providing it to you, or if there's delays, there's ways that you can kind of make do. I'm really looking forward to, we actually just ordered off of Amazon, and I was hoping I would have it for today, but it's an iPhone holder, but that has a built-in lighting around it, because I've been doing enough of these sessions now that I've been experimenting with light, but it was inexpensive, I think less than $30, and something that I can kind of prop up and use as may be needed to make sure that I'm kind of putting my best foot forward. And then just the other thing, I think and I think it will probably get into the question of mindset, and again, kind of looking at Jen McDougall as an example here. I've been doing some of these presentations, and at one point someone made a comment about, kind of choosing where she was going to work, and she was exploring or contemplating working from the cottage. And there was kind of a question, and she had this kind of, I think, mental block of where you could work and where it was appropriate to work, and she was worried about if she worked at the cottage that it might kind of ruin her happy place. And so kind of the advice that actually my husband and I gave to her was just try it out. Nothing hurts if it doesn't work. And if it's miserable and it kind of the work flows into your happy place, just don't do that anymore and work from home. But there are different ways that we can kind of test out. And I think, it really is about figuring out what works best for you. So just wanted to add in those few flavors and then turn it back over to Natasha to talk about mindset.
Great. So mindset is important. So for me, what I found was most important for my mindset was routine and schedule. And I noticed in the first 3 months of teleworking, when I flipped to remote working way back 2 years ago, it was nice to be home and work from home remotely. But then what I realized quickly was that I was missing my office routine and my daily routine, and it started to impact a little bit on my mental health. What I discovered was that when I actually did the routine that I did before, when I was leaving the house, and what I did at the office while I was working in this chair remotely from my home, then I actually felt better. So what does that look like for me? It meant that every morning I was getting up and I was showering and I was getting dressed for work. So I would scan my day and see if I was presenting, for instance, or teaching a class, then I would dress a little bit more formally. And if it was more of an informal check-in day with just my colleagues, then I would dress a little more business casual. I got my kids ready for the day. I made their lunches and snacks. And before the pandemic, that meant doing that and then sending them off to school. during the pandemic, it meant doing that and then settling them down for some activities and looking forward, who knows what that looks like, but I will still maintain that routine of making our lunches so that it frees up some time during the day that I'm not thinking about, you know, have my children eaten and what should I feed them. And then as well as I would sit down and review my day at the onset, which I always did when I worked in an office. I would come in, I would sit down, I would open up my calendar, look at my day, and then mentally prepare and plan for it, and then dig into my day and start it. So I guess what this boils down to is, you know yourself best. What's your most productive way of working? Think about the routines that you had prior to, you know, working this way, and try and mimic those, and you'll see that it does make an impact on how you feel when you're working through your workday. I did set parameters also too for the people that were working in my home with me while I was working from home, and letting them know, you know, when I had optimal times for them to come and talk to me or address me for something, and when I was busy and they could not absolutely in the day interrupt me, so that they knew my schedule. And then I equally did that for my colleagues and let them know when I have gaps in my day, so that if they needed to tap on me for some work or anything that they felt was important that we needed to check in on, that I had those openings in a day. And it made the day feel more structured, and it made Monday feel like Monday and Sunday feel like Sunday. So those mindsets at home do impact, you know, how you're producing your work during the day. Also too, it's important to understand that if you're at home and you're working with your kids at home, which right now it's sort of a mixed bag for everyone, no matter what, you're trying to balance it. And I think everybody understands that this is unprecedented times, and that it's not normal. We're all working remotely from home during a pandemic. So, you know, you can just try and balance your day the best that you can, but we all understand that balancing a day when it's in these unprecedented times is really, really tricky thing to do. So just do the best that you can, and, you know, make some time for mindfulness, which leads me to prioritizing your well-being. It's super important to maintain your relationships with your colleagues while you're working throughout the day. You know, I felt that if I had my virtual walk through the office the same way I would have had I been physically in an office, and been able to check in with my colleagues with some of the technology that's been provided for us right now, like MS Teams, we're able to check in and just message our colleagues. And if you're not, you know, you can try using WebEx or what have you to have that 15-minute check-in. It's really great to have an informal conversation and do the things that we used to do prior to working this way. It's important to keep those moments, and those moments really matter for how you feel when you're working with your colleagues. You know, you feel more connected, it feels more organic, and you know, everyone knows what they're working on, and it's just a really nice mindful practice to have with your colleagues as well. And also other ways of mindfulness practicing, there's videos on YouTube for meditation, there's relaxation and breathing and yoga. I would just advise to recognize when you're feeling stressed or anxious, talk to your manager about it, and you know, the EAP is always available if you need it. And ultimately, remember it's important to remember to take your breaks, stretch your legs, get your fresh air. It's easy to go straight onto a computer at, you know, 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. for some people and work 8 solid hours and never get up and walk away. And that's not healthy either. So remember that you need to take those breaks and have those pauses. It's important for your mental health. And we are working in strange and stressful times. So my advice for most when work is frantic, you know, to try and have a realistic pace for the fast-paced times, and when it's calm, to enjoy those calmer times. We're all trying our best to make it through this challenging time. So over to you, Jen, for next slide.
Merci beaucoup, Natacha. Je vais peut-être juste répondre pendant qu'on transfère à la prochaine question, à la question de Pascal, qui demande comment faites-vous pour rester discipliné avec toutes les tentations, les distractions à la maison. Donc, je peux te dire, Pascal, que moi, le plus haut défi que j'avais au départ dans mes 4 premiers mois était que j'étais assise à la table de ma cuisine à côté du frigo. Et j'avais vraiment beaucoup de difficultés à ne pas être distraite puis à me laisser tenter par tout ce qu'il y avait dans le frigidaire. Donc, maintenant, je me suis installée dans un environnement où est-ce qu'il y a une séparation. Donc, je suis au sous-sol en ce moment. Puis aussi, maintenant, avec mon chien, je sais que si je dois monter en haut, je vais avoir besoin de sortir mon chien en même temps. Donc, c'est désincitatif à me promener puis aller là-bas. Mais je fais un peu des blagues, mais c'est vrai en même temps. Puis je pense qu'une des choses qui est aussi importante, où il y a plein de techniques que tu peux utiliser. Moi, ce que je fais, c'est que je m'assure, je bloque du temps pour plein de différentes activités dans mon calendrier. Donc, j'ai des rencontres, on va en parler un peu plus tard, mais des rencontres bilatérales avec mes collègues. Pour faire des check-ins, on a des rencontres d'équipe qui sont prédéterminées. Je me bloque du temps pour travailler. Je me bloque du temps pour aller dîner sur l'heure du lunch pour éviter que je me fasse booker des meetings sur l'heure du lunch dans la mesure du possible. Donc, je bloque le temps dans mon calendrier tel que nécessaire pour aussi donner le temps à mon cerveau de changer un peu de mode d'opération parce que quand on était aussi au bureau, on avait les déplacements qu'il fallait faire pour soit se rendre à des rencontres ou juste même sortir sur l'heure du lunch, aller chercher quelque chose. On n'a pas toutes ces distractions-là maintenant. Donc, c'est facile de tomber dans un mode de démotivation ou aussi du contraire, même de trop travailler et de ne pas penser à se lever de notre banc. Donc, pour moi, en tout cas, c'est la technique de mon côté qui fonctionne. And so just kind of weighing into the next slide, we just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about trust because trust within your teams is going to be an essential element to success. And even pre-pandemic, we used to get these questions about, you know, how will I know if my employee's working if I can't see them? And unfortunately, I think with not just within the public service, but many kind of office-based organizations, there is this idea of, you know, presenteeism equals performance, and that's really not the case. And we'd seen lots of teams that had distributed, that had people working on different floors or in different buildings. You know, and Jen's out in Moncton, and so, you know, the school has offices across the country, and so there's just this kind of reliance, and you have to have the confidence that the people that you hired or your colleagues that have been hired to do a certain job are doing that job. But it is important to be reaching out, to keeping the lines of communication open, to be reliable with your colleagues. If you say you're going to do something or be somewhere at a specific time, if you have kind of an arrangement that you have a team meeting, expecting that people will show up. And if you're not going to show up for whatever reason, you know, Natasha and I both have kids who've gotten braces recently, you know, so the orthodontic appointments have kind of are eating into some of our regularly scheduled meeting times. So just let people know that you're not going to be there, and maybe share through another mechanism the same information that you would have shared had you kind of shown up in person. So those are things that I would say are very important. Also, to avoid assumptions. And it's a tough one because we're in an environment right now where there's so much uncertainty. There's, you know, we're in a pandemic. Things keep changing every day. We're more probably stressed in different ways than we normally would be. So it's easy to kind of get into that negative mindset, and in that negative mindset to kind of make assumptions, and sometimes negative assumptions. You know, Natasha didn't send me that email because she's, you know, watching Netflix, you know, hanging out with her dog. Whereas it's actually, well, no, she's not watching Netflix. She has one of her kids that's actually home today because it's a day that the kid doesn't have school at home, and the kid is having problems connecting and doing their homework. So she's just taken that kind of 2-minute break to go and help to troubleshoot what her kid is doing. So, so kind of don't jump to those negative inferences, and try to give as you can to your colleagues. Be as open and give as much information as you can about what's going on. We have to remain, of course, flexible. I think the environment doesn't give us any choice these days, but, you know, the arrangement that I have today might not work tomorrow because I'm, you know, just outside of Montreal, and we just realized that, you know, that whole reality of our region is changing tomorrow in terms of kind of what people will be able to access and what schools are going to be open and all those things. So we have to continuously adapt. And also, I think we just have to be kind of adults and honest and give feedback. So what are working, what's not working, and again, that, you know, being flexible and adaptable in that kind of realm, because again, there's something that might work today that might not work tomorrow. So be honest and give feedback about what you're appreciating, what's working well for you, what's not, and kind of open that up and invite that from others, I would encourage. Peut-être la prochaine diapositive par rapport à la communication. Donc, pour bâtir la confiance, la communication est absolument un élément clé. Puis, dans beaucoup de nos équipes, je pense qu'on n'a pas nécessairement pris le temps de repenser les façons de communiquer. On a développé peut-être juste par obligation des nouvelles façons de faire, mais je pense qu'on vous encourageait de prendre peut-être un pas vers l'arrière, un pas de recul avec vos équipes pour penser dans les façons dont vous communiquer dans vos équipes, d'utiliser une variété d'outils. Nous, vous voyez ici sur la diapositive, on a fait des profils d'équipe qui nous permettent de partager un peu des informations sur nos styles, nos préférences, qu'est-ce qu'on aime un peu moins. Ça peut être une façon un peu drôle et le fun de partager des choses qu'on serait peut-être un peu moins à l'aise de faire juste de façon naturelle. Mais ça vous permet de savoir, comme moi, si tu veux me rendre folle, tu vas m'appeler dans le milieu de la journée comme cold call. Parce que moi, je passe beaucoup de temps à faire des présentations comme ceci ou en meeting, ou comme j'ai dit tout à l'heure, je bloque du temps dans mon calendrier pour faire certaines activités. Donc, quand je bloque du temps, c'est parce que souvent, je préfère pas me faire déranger. Donc, je vous encourage à mettre des paramètres en place et à utiliser des différents channels, des différentes façons ou véhicules de communication selon ce que vous avez besoin de communiquer. Puis, c'est aussi une façon d'établir un peu ces façons de faire-là, c'est en utilisant ce qu'on appelle un team charter. So a team charter concept is something that I really encourage all teams to even just have a discussion, even if you can't agree on a full charter. But it's a bit of a contract amongst the members of your team about how you're going to operate, what the expectations are, kind of the rules of engagement that you have. So, in certain teams, people, because of other obligations, some people are choosing to work at different times of the day and kind of complete and round out some of their deliverables. So if someone is emailing you at 8 p.m. at night, are they expecting you to respond that night? You should have a clear understanding of the circumstances where that might be a response might be expected, or kind of the regular expectation where that might not be kind of a requirement. So allows you to kind of talk through some of those things and expose if there are some of the things that are maybe a bit of a rub in the team and maybe rubbing people maybe the wrong way. And in these cases, because we might also be a little bit more sensitive due to all of the kind of the change and uncertainty around us. Keep in mind as well when you're communicating those different preferences of different people. We've got, I'm sure on the call, some people that are more social and extroverted in nature and some that are less social and extroverted in nature. So even just things like, best practice that we will, Natasha and I will say is great to be able to see people and to be able to see the face and the expressions. But not everyone appreciates that and really likes that, maybe not have been in an environment where they're comfortable turning on their camera, or they're again dealing with kids that daycares that are closed, and so keep that in mind as how you're choosing to communicate with people, and then just have those communications lines as open as possible and communicating frequently and regularly. Donc sur ça, I'll turn it back over to Natasha.
Great, if you could switch to the next slide, please. So meetings and collaboration, and Jen touched a little bit on this, thinking and considering the quantity and quality of your meetings. So, do you really need to have, a day filled with meetings or a week filled with meetings with back-to-back meetings? I personally find that, when you're on video camera all day long and you're constantly talking, it doesn't really give you a lot of opportunity to roll up your sleeves and get work done. So to be considerate with your colleagues when you're booking in your schedules, think about blocks of time where you can free up so that we can have maybe like Wednesday morning as a meetingless morning so that people can get those work blocks done, as well as, etiquette and best practices. Jen mentioned the team charter. It's really great to get your team onto the same page and consider, a unity and a clarity of how you're going to proceed in your work days. At FluxGC, we can't say enough about team charters, and I think Jen can maybe post the link for that in our chat if she can. As well as, testing out your tech in advance. Get a buddy to help you figure out, you know, the platform that you're going to be using. I know for Zoom, I actually don't use it very often. So the other day I was able to connect with one of my colleagues, Christine, who works at FlexGC with us, and I got to play around with it just to familiarize myself with it so that I was able to present today. So, you know, testing out a platform is great because, you know, there's sort of two things happening there with your colleagues. You're sort of building that connectivity, that organic connection, and you're learning a new skill at the same time. So, you know, it's a win-win to test out your tech. Jen mentioned earlier on that a headset or noise canceling headset is key. I'm not wearing mine right now because I forgot to charge the battery. So, you know, remember to charge your headset. But it's great because it blocks out, you know, background noise or incoming noise and filters out sort of those disruptive moments where your dog has barked, and touch wood, my dog has not barked yet, thank goodness. You know, your mute button is also your best friend and your worst enemy. I know that a lot of us have been in meetings, even Jen and I, and we're veterans, where, you know, someone says you're on mute and you're like, oh, I can't believe I talked for a full 2 minutes, and you know. So just always make sure to check your mute button when you're in your meeting. Be inclusive in your meetings. Give everyone a chance to speak if they want to speak, of course, but like I find that going around the table or opening it up with nice salutations where you can sort of have an informal conversation in the beginning so that it sort of eases people into it. Not everybody's comfortable with a meeting, and I've discovered recently that one of our colleagues doesn't feel comfortable on camera. So, you know, it's just sort of understanding those specific needs of your colleagues as well when you're meeting with them virtually. Also, too, I find that it's helpful to confirm in writing before, or sorry, after the meeting, just to let's summarize what it is, if there's any tasks that are available that need to be completed, just to make sure that you got it all right and you can move on into your work block that you've booked off Wednesday mornings to get that work done. Also, too, when you're making your meetings, and I'm terrible at doing this sometimes with Jen and some of my other colleagues, you know, but be mindful of the time zones. I know that Jennifer's in Moncton, and sometimes I'm messaging her for a 7 a.m. meeting, and I apologize for that. Giving yourself some space between meetings is super important too. I mentioned with the mindfulness discussion earlier, you know, taking those 5 minutes to stretch your legs, go to the washroom, you know, pet your dog, and then come back and start again, just so you can have a little bit of a mental pause between going right into something else. It's always hard to transition, and I often feel flustered without that little pause in between. And sometimes it's important to connect with your team all together at the same time. And I encourage that if you have to create like team meetings, to sort of do them on a reoccurring basis in your calendar so that you know when you're going to be doing that. So the frequency is already booked in there if you can. That's the best way that I think we've made use of our shared times as a team. I know that every, you know, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9:30, I have my check-in, and no matter what, I'm prepared for that. So, so that's some tips and tricks on meetings and collaborations. We'll switch to the next slide, please. So this slide talks about technology and tools. And if you had asked me, you know, like a few months ago, what was your most preferred platform, I would have said WebEx, because that's what Jen and I used all the time prior to the pandemic. And it was, you know, it was sort of a hit and miss because you have your phone and you had your tablet and the two weren't synced together. But now we have some other WebExing conferencing tools that are available in the new world. So we're using, where we are, MS Teams right now as our tech tools. And as a free agent, you know, I've had the opportunity to try out other tools at all, not all of them, but some of the other tools as well. And I think it's important to recognize that, you know, across the government, we're all trying to work within the tenet that are is approved within our you know, specific tenant. Like for us, it's Teams, but not everybody's on that platform yet. So it's always nice to have a touch point and find out if there's a workaround that you can have so that you can have that collaborative meeting still. So just doing that checkpoint is always nice. So SSC is working too with the IT shops and all departments to help deploy MS Teams for everyone. But in the interim, they have deployed a GC collaboration as an open source platform, which is a workaround to MS Teams too. So if you're able to, you could always ask your IT department if you're able to get that. Again, it's whatever's approved within your department. So I guess we also have some wiki tools that I can share in the chat as well to help people as they're learning to navigate through MS Teams if that's helpful for some. So I'll make sure to post that in the chat. But in the meantime, there's lots of collaboration across the system in government where there's groups that are trying to get helpful information out. Obviously, FYN is one of those examples that we're having today, and FlexGC obviously is another example. But there's bus rides, One Team Gov, Leaders GC, and so many more. So I suggest, if you can, to just go scouring onto GC Collab or on Twitter and try and find out more about these platforms or on the school's website, and just do some reading and see what's out there. There's a lot of tools available for all of us, and really it's an exciting opportunity to be able to heighten all of our skills during this time. You know, it's 2020, and I feel like we're just now getting into sort of like this virtual world finally, and I'm understanding what my kids have been telling me, you know, like, get with the times, Mom. I finally am. So I'll pass that over to Jen for the next slide now.
Je pense qu'il y avait un commentaire par rapport à tous les outils, and it definitely can be overwhelming. And I think, you know, we've had the opportunity and taken the opportunity. I think it is important in the various kind of groups that we have been engaging, both within our team, but also with groups like FlexGC, where we've had the opportunity to collaborate with colleagues that are in other organizations who maybe have had the opportunity to have different tools deployed within their organizations, but to test things out. So different types of Miro boards, and we've got a post in here about Trello, and there's lots of different tools that, you know, I knew nothing about Miro and Trello, you know, 4 months ago, not to say I'm an expert in them, but I've become much more adept. There's lots of folks out there, and even kind of new and as new and young employees, as many of you would be. If you have access to those, if you come across them in your travels, you might be able to explore within your organization if there are other tools that could be kind of become part of the suite. Often in different teams, you have kind of these IT or tech ambassadors who work with IT to help deploy and can be experts. Kind of Natasha is one of those for us on Teams, and comes up with these, you know, tips and tricks that she shares with us about kind of the new and the greatest, and did you know you could do this now in Teams? So there's ways in which we can kind of keep each other attuned and kind of sur la fine pointe de toute la nouvelle technologie. Mais tout ceci étant dit, c'est quand même important de reconnaître qu'on travaille à l'intérieur d'un appareil gouvernemental. Il y a beaucoup de lois et de politiques et d'obligations qui gouvernent notre façon de faire. Donc, même si on accède plein de nouveaux outils de collaboration, il faut aussi être encore très discipliné dans la façon de choisir et d'utiliser les outils. When we're doing things for official government business versus some of the more social or kind of punctual interactions, think about, again, just, you know, what tool you're going to use. You're going to use your email versus using Teams versus using, you know, instant messaging of some sort or text on the phone. So just be mindful of that, because we do still have requirements with respect to access to information and privacy, and making sure that kind of records of business value are kept and available for posterity purposes. Also keeping in mind the values and ethics code of the public service. It's a difficult environment, and sometimes we can, you know, get swayed by lots of different things. So just kind of keeping those in mind and staying on the straight and narrow, and that those values that guide us. And where you have some questions, you know, we've mentioned a number of times the world keeps evolving around us, donc le monde continue d'évoluer, et c'est possible que les façons de faire aujourd'hui vont changer demain. Donc le bureau de la dirigeante principale des ressources humaines émet régulièrement des informations qui sont disponibles à tous les fonctionnaires. So there's guidance that's coming out consistently from the Chief Human Resources Officer. We'll have a link, I think, in the deck if it can be shared with folks following the meeting, but there, but also your departments kind of through the regular communications channels should be sharing some of that intelligence with you. And if there's stuff that you're not too sure about, you know, reach out to groups like FYN and or the folks at FlexGC. Always help to interpret or give guidance or kind of point you in the right direction as maybe needed, or maybe you'll identify a topic that, you know, FYN can organize a future session that would be of benefit to other colleagues, so that if something is a mystery to you, it might be a mystery to someone else as well. Donc sur ça, je sais qu'il y a des questions, mais do you want to open it up, Jen? And bring us back?
Absolutely. So I see you have some resources. We will, like we said, we'll share the deck on our wiki page. So where you registered for today's session, we will upload the English and the French version of this PowerPoint so that you can have that as a resource. But let's get to some of the questions, because I made note of some of the questions. I actually really need the help. I am part of FlexGC Network, but I'm not an expert yet. So I actually wanted to address one of the questions that was most recently put in about focusing and multitasking, because we actually have a session planned for October the 6th on productivity. So our productivity session is going to really talk about multitasking versus multi-focusing. And I know that Todd Scanlon and Jody LeBlanc are going to give us some great tips on that. But why don't you guys give us some of the tips that you have as far as how your space is set up to enable you to focus? You have some tips.
Well, for myself, I'm in an open space in my home. So, you know, if I'm being interrupted or disrupted, it's, I think, obvious in my meetings because, you know, I become frazzled. So the way that I stay focused at home is, like I said, I start my day out where I check my calendar off at the onset, and I know what it is that I'm doing and where my gaps are. I let my family know that so that they don't tap on me if I'm in an important meeting or I'm in my work time, and then they know when to tap on me later. Of course, my kids are older, so they can understand that. You know, I'm not at home working with a toddler or baby. So, you know, it's a little bit easier for me. But, you know, I do have like a to-do list. I check through it, and it's sort of evergreen every day as I'm going through it. I reprioritize, and I, you know, refresh it by adding whatever else pops up during the day, and just kind of keep it there to guide me, I guess. And that's how I stay on track. Now, in terms of disruptions, like I said, my dog will bark and it flusters me. I think we're all human and we get disrupted, but, you know, we do our best. Jen?
Well, let me actually, before you move to Jen, actually, I didn't nuance the question quite right. How do you stay on track when you're in a session, like when you're in a virtual meeting and you're tempted to write that briefing, or you're tempted to check your email? Like right now, I'm sure all of us have our computers on, and I see my emails, my texting. For some reason, my dad keeps calling me and leaving voicemail. I hope it's not urgent, that he'll call someone else because I can't answer. So how do you stay in the zone and really stay focused on what you're doing when there is the opportunity to be multitasking, whether it's multitasking with your personal life or whether it's multitasking with your work life? That's the tricky part.
It is very, and I maybe I'll jump in, and I will not, you know, I won't pretend that I'm an expert in this zone. And I think it comes down to personal style as well. I tend to be just generally a multitasker in my everyday life. So I need a little bit of that. And I find that sometimes I do, you know, I'm a mom, so I always need to be doing 6 different things at the same time. But I think even in meetings, one of the things that I find helpful is turning on the video, because I know that if I'm on video, you can see, for the most part, maybe I'm taking notes about something, but you'll see if I'm distracted, and you'll see if I'm making a face because I got a weird email, or if my father or mother are calling me, because they always tend to do so at a very a bad time. So I think that, you know, if you need to focus on something, it's about setting those parameters, maybe moving to a different zone of the house. If you can set yourself up, bring your tablet, kind of lock the doors, put on music, whatever kind of gets you into the right zone. If you're distracted by your personal phone, putting it aside. When I do these sessions, I always make sure to turn off my personal phone. I still watch it, just, you know, again, in case there's you know, an emergency call from the school, because they also tend to always happen at the worst possible time. But I like to remind myself that I have a husband whose emergency contact info the school has as well. So if I don't answer, ostensibly they should be calling him. But I think for me, it comes back in terms of kind of blocking those times and kind of sticking to them. I've shared this on previous calls, and maybe I'll share it here again. You know, one of the things when I first myself started working virtually full time, when not everyone was working virtually full time, I think I had a bit of a guilt complex of the privilege and opportunity that I had, and I felt this need to be available all the time. that, you know, I couldn't go to the washroom without bringing my phone, because God forbid someone would call in that 30 seconds that I was not sitting at my desk and would think that I was slacking off. I had this idea that everyone would be judging me on my availability. And so that's something that I still, I'm not going to say I'm perfect, that I've worked at and that I still struggle with. I still kind of carry my phone around. I'll take the dog out, bring the phone with me, but I try to set some of those parameters. If someone calls me at lunchtime, I often won't answer. I'll just choose not to answer because I need to eat. And it's important for me to remain productive and to stay healthy and to come back to work for the afternoon with a kind of better, you know, kind of refreshed mindset. So I think it's important to kind of to be deliberate, but it takes practice. It's just like I'm into lots of sports, and you don't become good at a sport over day, right? It's building those new muscles. You have to, you know, it takes the right tools and equipment, and it takes practice over time, and you have to be kind of consistent with that practice, and figure out again what works for you and what works for the team that you work in. So those would be my words of advice for whatever those are worth.
C'est tellement bien dit, Jen. Puis c'est important, Natacha l'a mentionné déjà, qu'il faudra toujours prendre une pause mentale de votre travail. Puis on va parler le 6 octobre encore, la productivité. I know that Todd Scanlon also wants to talk about that during the productivity session, that your first hour is often your most productive hour. And if you can actually manage to disconnect over your lunch break or whatever you do as your break, you actually can get really great productivity right afterwards. Whereas some people, like when Natasha's talking about the back to back to back to back, like I know I get so deep in my back to back to back to back that I have no idea even what call I'm on. It happened to me earlier today. Actually, I thought I was on the wrong call, and I get confused because there's just so much going on and my brain can't absorb it all. And I think it's different in real life when you're walking into a physical room and you see the setting change than if you're on virtual calls. So I think it's really interesting to look at how to stay in the zone. And I love the tip with keeping the camera on. So maybe we should talk about doing that, because that is the best way to stop from cheating, right? Like otherwise you take out all your tools and things like that. Oh, go ahead.
I might just, no, just one other thing. Quand tu parlais, une autre technique que j'ai entendu parler, puis ça revient un peu à se bloquer du temps. Au lieu de réserver des rencontres, au lieu de faire une rencontre d'1 heure, par exemple, fais-le pour 45 minutes. Donc, si tu as vraiment besoin de prolonger la rencontre, tu peux, mais sinon, ça te garde peut-être un petit 15 minutes de répit. Je pense qu'encore une fois, quand on devait se déplacer physiquement d'une rencontre à l'autre, on bloquait ce temps-là dans nos meetings, mais on ne le fait plus maintenant parce qu'on peut juste se raccrocher et se reloguer sur une autre rencontre. Donc, peut-être une des techniques que j'ai entendu qu'il essayait, c'est de raccourcir les meetings puis de se garder plus de temps entre les meetings. Donc, je sais.
Moi, je suis trop paresseuse. Le problème, c'est que Outlook vous donne juste les 30 minutes à la place. Comme, il faudrait taper si vous voulez juste 45 minutes, Jen, ça marche mal.
Oui, non, tu peux le faire. Ça se fait, Jen. Ça se fait.
Ça se fait. Je suis trop paresseuse. So, okay, there's another question. There's a couple more questions in the chat, and there was one in the Q&A. Ariane mentioned that she's not drinking enough water. I can totally relate. For me, I also don't drink enough water because I don't know if I'll get a break to go to the washroom. So I'm also afraid to drink too much water, kind of like being in an airplane. Look, they both just took a big drink of water while I said that. So what are your tips for making sure that you're staying healthy as far as eating healthy and not just grabbing a handful of chocolate covered almonds, which is what I had for lunch, or that you're not just drinking coffee all day? Like, how do you make sure that you're getting your water and eating and taking care of yourself healthy?
Well, I mentioned before that part of my routine, because I felt like I needed to do what I did before when I was in the office at home so that I felt like I was in the office. Part of that was making my lunch for the day and making my kids' lunch for the day. So I prepare my meals before I start my workday, and then I have them available when I take my breaks, and I don't have to do any prep or waste any time prepping that. And so for me, that's how I stay healthy and avoid the chips and the peanuts and, and the junk food. Yeah, so that's what I did. What did you, Jen?
No, and very similar for me, where I take the time that I would have used to take commuting to make the lunch and to anticipate and prepare for my lunch, or if I, if I have leftovers, and to know I'm going to be doing that. But if not, to prepare that, because often I am running and the kind of 11 o'clock meeting bleeds into the lunchtime. Oh, I'm just going to make one more call, and all of a sudden, oh, it's 12:55 and my 1 p.m. is starting. So having something that I know that I can access quickly. I will say I probably eat way too often at my desk while I'm like, oh, I'm just going to continue working while I'm eating. So not something that I would recommend, mais c'est quelque chose qui m'arrive très régulièrement. Pour l'eau, moi, je me garde une grosse bouteille à mon bureau et je la remplis constamment. Puis je m'efforce de la remplir le matin et l'après-midi et je m'efforce de la boire, because it's good for your physical health, but also for your mental health, and will get you to stretch those legs to make it to the washroom, as Jen was alluding to. So it'll force you, if you
to the
don't
washroom,
want
maybe.
just make sure you turn off your camera if you're in a video call and you're bringing your phone with you to the washroom. No, I'm joking.
And don't take your phone to the washroom. That's a pro tip. Don't do that.
But also,
oh, sorry, Jen. No. I was going to say, when you were talking earlier about adding that 15 minutes, that 15 minutes is a great time to grab a snack, or if you've pre-prepared something. And so, like when you elongate those meetings a little bit longer and you give yourself that buffer, then you have that little snack break time so that you're not ravished and grabbing the unhealthy food and staying healthy.
Yeah.
One of the first... Oh, go ahead, Jen.
No, I was just going to say that for those of you that have the privilege of having things like a smartwatch, like my watch reminds me to stand up. And it's crazy how I feel like the hours just kind of go by so fast. I'd be like, it can't be already. It tells me stand up again. I felt like I just stood up. But then I do realize that it was, an hour before that I had stood up. So if you have access to some of those smartwatches and tools, make use of them and don't kind of try to override them. My brother-in-law taught me you can just swing your arm and it kind of thinks you're walking, so it overrides it and fakes your stand hour, but don't do that. Or again, block time into your calendar where people won't schedule meetings. So maybe that 30-minute block where you'll actually get your rest, go get your snack, not the rest, but the snack, and get, kind of stretch your legs, get your water, and maybe have, 15 minutes to answer some emails or to think. God forbid you'd have 15 minutes to kind of think and work on something that you weren't kind of rushing about. So I encourage you to block time in your calendars and to stick to that and program the reminders so you get the pop-ups on your computer.
These are good tips. If only we can implement them. I find it's almost like listening to someone talk about a diet, and that's the right thing to do, but are you going to do it? Hard to say. So I'm learning a lot, but implementing it is a whole different thing. And I think that's the part that's hard. Like, we all know the right thing to do, but then in the day-to-day, we get so wrapped up in our work that we forgot to drink our water, or we forgot to stand up, or we just grab an unhealthy snack, or it is really challenging. So one of the first questions that came up in the chat, and I don't want to neglect it, we did touch on most of it already, it was about what to do if you don't have a dedicated home office space. Now, I know that Jen talks about her partition and her husband being in the cubicle on the other side of the partition between them. And I know that Natasha moves around her house. I move around my house too. We kind of have, it's like GC co-working here. There's lots of us working in different workstations. Having conversations with family and setting parameters we've already touched on, and making sure you have the right equipment to be able to move around is also essential. Are there any other tips that you guys want to touch on as far as the challenges of working from home if you don't have a dedicated desk, office, door space?
Well, I would say that if you don't have a dedicated office or desk or space and you're working off your kitchen counter, at the end of the day, putting away your equipment, and I know that sounds like quasi, not practical, because you then have to plug it all back in the next day. But at least then, if you're working at the kitchen bar and at the end of the night, you're gathering at that kitchen bar with your table, you change sort of the mindset of what that kitchen bar is. It's no longer a place where you had, that 3-hour meeting today that made your head hurt, and now it's a place where you're gathering with your family. So sometimes it's about tricking your mindset as opposed to changing your physical space, just so that you can adapt if you don't have a physical space where you can adapt.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I had a friend who posted that she just has this kind of box that she takes her computer and hides it in at the end of the day, just so that she doesn't physically see it and she's not attracted to come back to it. And I think it's really important to have that kind of separation between work and home, and especially as some of our cities and areas are maybe going back into more lockdown. Comme on n'a pas les distractions et les activités du soir pour nous garder occupés, c'est facile de vouloir retourner et retomber dans le travail. Puis toutes les études démontrent qu'on a besoin d'une pause physique et mentale au travail pour être plus productif. Donc, je vous encourage vraiment à soit quitter le bureau, fermer la porte ou juste ranger, comme Natacha disait, ranger l'équipement, que ce soit dans un sac, dans une boîte, n'importe quoi. Très important. Puis je regarde le commentaire à Ariane aussi, de se préparer le matin. Moi, c'est mon tip numéro 1 aussi, de se mettre en mode travail. Puis moi, encore, je compare ça, j'utilise beaucoup d'analogies du gym. Je n'irai pas au gym faire de l'exercice avec mes pyjamas parce que je ne serais pas dans le bon mindset pour avoir un bon workout. Donc, même genre de choses, même si c'est très confortable de travailler de la maison et de faire des meetings en pyjama, ça nous met dans un autre état d'esprit si on se prépare puis on se met en mode travail.
That's actually a really good example. One trick that I've just started doing, it's only been 3 weeks, so I think it's probably becoming a habit, is I walk my dogs in the morning before I start working. So I'm out of my pajamas and I'm into what is an acceptable outfit. So if I'm stuck in that all day, it's okay. And some days, my days do get completely out of control and end up wearing my dog walking outfit all day, but at least I'm out of my pajamas, right? Unlike today where I put on real clothes. I'm very excited for myself wearing clothes with real structure. It's very exciting. So there are more questions. And while I'm gathering that other question, I just want to mention one tip that I do. I love that you said a box, Jen, because that's really like the sad state of affairs that we're all in. Like we all went home not planning to be home, and you just like, I can imagine it's like a large cereal box from Costco and she just puts her laptop in it. I have a briefcase that I found in my closet when I was doing my home edit purging. I found a briefcase and I keep all of my work stuff in it. So for me, my work day includes my Surface, a tablet, 2 phones. Marcella got me into these blue light glasses for when my eyes get tired. I have a pen and I have paper. I have all my extension cords. I have 3 sets of different kinds of headsets. I have this handy card that says you're on mute, because sometimes people can't also hear you. So when you're on mute, that's good. I have the holder that my son made me for my phone. So I keep all of that together, because not only does it make it go away from my physical space and I can't see it, but also because then when I start in a rush in the morning, which we probably all are, because every day is chaos and COVID, at least I know all my stuff's in one place. So I grab the briefcase and I go, and it's like my go bag. I just grab it and go. So I think that that's working for me, but a box would be good too. You'd hide that easily. Forget about it on the weekend. So the question in chat, was the virtual meetings question. So yeah, how to concentrate on virtual meetings. And we already addressed that one. And now there's a question in chat. So about ergonomics. Oof, now that's a tough one. So what are we going to do about ergonomics? How do you know that your space is ergonomically correct? So Natasha mentioned working at your home island. I've done that a few times too. I like the height of a bar stool and a counter, actually. It keeps my posture nice and straight, but you can't sit there all day. And I know if you're not in the right chair, I was working from my kitchen chairs for a while, and then after a while, I was like, yeah, okay, this isn't working. So how do you set up your space ergonomically, and what can we use to do that at home? Are there any suggestions there?
Well, I'll just share, and I don't know if I have them handy. I might try to find them, but I know that I've seen through even like groups such as Fletch CC, there's been some little kind of one-pagers with some tips and tricks of what you can do at home. So there's, it's not just waiting for someone else. There's lots of great tools and resources out there that you can use and that give you guidance in terms of if you do have a monitor, what kind of height should it be at, and some of those things that you can use from around the house. I think one of the really good practices is that we've mentioned earlier is trying to move around and not kind of stagnate in the one spot all the time. Kind of pick up, and if you can go, and if you have a call and you don't necessarily need to do notes, if it's something just more info sharing, kind of do a walking call at the same time, as some people would do. I know even one of your colleagues, Anita, you used to do the walking meetings, so you can do that just on the phone if you have reception. So things like that, I think, in terms of mixing it up and making sure that you're not in the same position for too long in one spot. I think talking to your manager and talking to the occupational health and safety people within your own organization about what is available and if they have any tips and tricks, and seeing what the standards are in terms of equipment that can be provided to you, and making use of that as much as possible. Our ADM would complain all the time about, all of the pains and aches that he had everywhere. And then we would say, have you unpacked the monitor that's been sitting on your kitchen counter for the last 2 months? And he would say, no, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to it. So if you can kind of get yourself set up with kind of a more fulsome equipment, if you are working kind of and expected to work from home full time for a longer period, kind of if your space allows it, kind of prévalez-vous de l'équipement et prenez avantage de ça.
I see that we're just about out of time. Oh, did you want to add something, Natasha?
Hey, those are great tips. I have nothing further to add. Jen covered it all.
Okay, so as we close up, before I let you guys go, tell me one tool you can't live without that we should all either buy or try for our home work environment.
Jen, did you want to go first, or?
No, you go first.
It's not that hard a question.
Yeah.
What do you love? Oh,
they're my headphones that are sound canceling, and of course I couldn't connect them to my Zoom call because I wasn't good enough at figuring out how to do that. But it is connected to my PC tablet. I'm trying to get it so it doesn't disappear into my virtual background.
and they're wireless.
They're wireless and they're sound blocking. And so I have a dog that just frantically started barking because a furnace technician showed up at the door, which is why I didn't answer the last question. And had I had my sound canceling headphones on, I could have continued my conversation without anybody hearing my dog. And so for me, they're lifesavers, especially since I'm working from home with a dog and 6 children. So I have a lot of people in my house. I need to knock out a lot of noise. I can't live without my noise canceling headphones.
And can you tell us in the chat what kind they are, Natasha, just so that we know?
Yeah.
Tell us what they are. Okay, Jen, over to you. What you got?
Oh God, I don't even know.
Is it your Lego phone holder? Because it is kind of
my
famous.
Lego phone holder. It is famous, and it was my son who made it for me, and so it has a place near and dear in my heart. I'm really looking forward to having my new actual lighting iPhone holder. And so maybe I'll share that at a future session or tweet about it on the FYN website when I have it, because I'm very excited about getting it. But I think, I would echo the noise canceling headphones are a very, very important tool, especially I think in this environment in terms of protecting us all. And I think kind of, Jen, you were alluding to, if you're feeling that fatigue, which I think a lot of people are, is kind of exploring and learning and seeing what others have used. If there's, the blue light glasses, I've been hearing more and more people starting to use those and other tech that is available. So
and they're cheap on Amazon.
I wish I had a better answer. Very cool.
You can
and
get them
stylish.
delivered to your house, and they're just $10. So, yeah, absolutely. I think we can't, and I guess to conclude this session, we can't really rely on our departments to know all the things that we need, and even to give them to 270,000 of us to all get us all blue light glasses. Like, that's not going to happen. And so finding what makes you comfortable and what makes you productive and what helps you to do your job is kind of on you. But we're all in it together. So getting ideas, you can get tons of ideas from other people.
I have one final tip. I Googled if my monitor had eye saving capability so I didn't have to buy the Amazon glasses, and it did. So chances are your monitor has something set up in it. If you Google, it will tell you how to turn it on. Tip of the day.
Well, I guess Adding Natasha to your friends list on Twitter might help you as well, I guess. She's going to be able to share tips all the time. So we've gone over our time. We could talk all day. Thank you so much, ladies, for sharing your tips with us. Merci à tout le monde d'être venu, tous les participants, toutes les questions, puis les suggestions que vous avez mis dans le chat. We are in session 2 of our 7-part series. So come back next week. Check us out on our wiki to see which sessions most fit your lifestyle, or maybe you want to play us in the background every Tuesday to see which tips and tricks you can pick up. So thank you all very much. We will post the PowerPoint in the wiki page as soon as it's available. Merci et bonne journée.
Merci Jen et Marcella. Et n'oubliez pas d'aller boire de l'eau. C'est l'heure. À la prochaine.